Congressional Democrats are proposing new ways to address environmental racism in the U.S. They've recently introduced the Environmental Justice for All Act and the Environmental Justice Mapping and Data Collection Act of 2021. The bills would combat health disparities in poorer communities and communities of color. Experts say these neighborhoods are more likely to be polluted and exposed to climate-related threats such as flooding and droughts. For more, CBS News climate reporter Cara Korte joins me now. She's been reporting on these two bills. Hi there, Cara. Nice to see you. So let's talk first about the Environmental Justice for All Act. Can you explain what it would accomplish and why Senator Tammy Duckworth is pushing for it now?
Yeah, well, Elaine, environmental justice is kind of this cross-section of issues where racial and social justice meets climate activism. What are these injustices that we're talking about? Well, we know that in the United States, people of color are more likely to make up the majority of population in neighborhoods that are adversely affected to pollution. This is what's known as fence line communities. We also know that water quality can suffer in low-income and majority minority communities. Think of the Flint water crisis, where a majority Black community, majority low-income community was drinking poisoned water. So it's things like air quality, it's things like water quality. We also know that urban and low-income rural areas, Elaine, are spending more than 3 times the amount on energy utilities as more affluent areas. So it's a vast array of environmental injustices are occurring in this country. What the bill will do, will enhance the 1964 Civil Rights Act to include environmental injustice laws. It'll also establish a working board that will oversee that these laws are being enforced and also better track what is going on in regards to environmental injustice across the country. Now, Duckworth is heading this reintroduction. She just reintroduced the bill yesterday. She said she really had an aha moment in 2016 when she ran for the Senate and she saw firsthand what was happening in all different parts of Illinois. I had the chance to speak with her about this, and she spoke to me about the impression that was left on her.
Then when I went down into Southern Illinois and I started to see issues in East St. Louis, issues that have to do with failures in investments in their sewer systems and the like, where you see investments made in the sewer systems on the more affluent side of town, but the poorer side of town, they have backup sewage every time it rains. And so when I became a senator and started dealing with the entire state and starting to be more exposed to local communities and talking to community activists, I really had an aha moment when it came to, wow, there's real structural racism that exists in this country.
What about the Environmental Justice Mapping and Data Collection Act of 2021? Explain what it is and why is it important?
That's another bill that the Democrats are pushing right now for environmental justice, Elaine. I spoke to Representative Cori Bush, who is a young progressive from St. Louis, just the other side of the river of what Senator Tammy Duckworth was talking to us about there. Bush is kind of at this intersection of environmental justice herself. She is a well-known social, racial rights activist, but she is also a nurse. And she told me that in St. Louis and in so many low-income areas across the country, we see that things like early onset asthma is extremely high in rates of Black communities, other low-income communities. And so she says we have to start looking at things like air quality. Why is this happening? And the reason why she's endorsing the mapping tool is because she says it empowers people to make decisions. What does this mapping tool look like? Well, something like it already exists in California. The aim of this congressional bill is to have this system in every state. But in California, they have a large collection of data points, things like air quality, water quality, even things like access to safe green space. You can type in your zip code and you can basically find out your score of your neighborhood, of your area, and see how it compares to other areas in your state. So Bush said this will not only empower people to make their own decisions, where if I want to move somewhere, you can decipher as close as the zip code where places have more or less pollution and more or less likelihood of experiencing the effects of climate change. So she said this is really about empowering people on the ground. She said COVID-19 is a great example of this, saying that if people of color, for example, are more exposed to air pollution and they're getting asthma more, then they're already higher incline of having comorbidities to something like COVID-19. And we're seeing that people of color have higher rates of death rates when it comes to COVID-19. So she said this is all about interconnectedness. It's about empowering people, and she believes something like this mapping tool across the country can do that.
Yeah, it's really fascinating to see these connections here between the levels of pollution and the resulting health consequences. To be able to narrow it down like that is really, really sobering. All right, Cara Korte, it's been a while, Cara. It's good to see you. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Elaine.